Where is Tiffany Dover? If you can hear me properly, I'd appreciate it. Where is Tiffany Dover? If you can hear me properly, please write, where is Tiffany Dover? Waiting for the chat to catch up. Right, where is Tiffany Dover? Great, great. That way I know that you guys can hear me properly and see me properly and everything's copacetic. So, the last 24 hours have been very exciting, let me tell you. A little bit more. It got really interesting around 11 a.m. yesterday. I'll get to that in just a moment. How many people we got here? 1,000 people. Wow, that's very exciting. Very exciting. But it's weird. It said 1,800 before, but now it's 1,000. Well, people must have winked out and come back on. I do believe that my channel, by the way, is probably going to get terminated very soon. The reason I'm saying this is because when I've been logging in as of today, there's this long lag, this very long lag. And I think that they're going to unperson me pretty soon, okay? So if that happens, if I am unpersoned, like they used to unperson people back in the bad old days of the Soviet Union, if that happens, it was, thanks for all the fish, dude, it's so funny that when you say things that are factually accurate, that go against the bullshit that is floating around, oh, you get into all kinds of trouble, You all know the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, right? The Aesop's Fables, or Aesop. I've never really known how to pronounce that name. Anyway, Aesop or Aesop, be that as it may. In the fable, there are these two con men who arrive at a kingdom. And these con men, weasel their way into the circle of the king, into the court. And they claim that they are tailors and that they have this extremely expensive cloth that's so sophisticated that only brilliant and intelligent and sophisticated people can actually see it. It's invisible to the fools. And so, everybody, because nobody wants to be, shown up to be a fool, says, oh, yes, I see the beautiful cloth. It's so lovely. Yeah, and these two con men, they pantomime showing this cloth to the king. And they tell the king that they'll make him a brand new suit out of this cloth. And it's only going to cost him, a gazillion gold coins or whatever, right? So the king, he doesn't want to seem to be a fool or unsophisticated. So he pays the men, and the men pretend to make him this suit out of this very sophisticated clothing, and they put him on the king, and they make their escape as the king decides to go out and on parade in his kingdom. And everybody applauds, and everybody's just fascinated, and everybody just like oohs and ahs, all that. And there's one little boy who looks at the king quizzically and then points and says, why is that man naked? Now, that's the story of the Emperor's New Clothes. Now, of course, they never tell you what happened to the little boy who pointed out the fact that the emperor was naked. They never tell you what happened to him. You know what probably happened to him? He probably got shot, or he probably got deplatformed, or he probably got a whole bunch of death threats. Or probably he was ejected from his hotel, his hotel suite, for saying the wrong thing. Yeah, now I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But yeah, the last 30 odd hours have been very, very, very interesting. And well, you get into trouble for telling the truth because people don't want to hear the truth. And also what happens is that, sometimes the truth helps people that the majority hate. And therefore, if you point out the fact of some certain truth, everybody hates you, not the enemy. They hate you for pointing it out. That's why I tell you, man, the kid in the Emperor's New Clothes, he didn't live past sundown. Oh no, they took care of him real good. I'll tell you that. So let me tell you what happened over the last 30 odd hours. Yesterday morning, what was it, the 28th of February. For those of you who don't know, by the way, today is the 1st of March, and I usually celebrate my birthday on the 1st of March because, I was born on leap year on February 29th, 1968. And so I get a birthday every 4 years, and am I there? Hit me with Tiffany Dover if I'm back. I thought I was gone for good. I thought that, just the story of the Emperor's New Clothes was enough to get me deplatformed, man. I mean, oof, yeah. I mean, it's gonna happen. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, what was I saying? Yeah. Yesterday morning, I had breakfast, and then, as you might recall, if you follow me on Telegram, I went for a ramble around Krishatik. I walked all the way from the Premier Palace Hotel down the Krishatik all the way to Maidan Square and back. And I reported on what I heard and what I saw. And what I saw was very little. There were a bunch of press people at the Maidan Square, and I made sure to video them and make it clear what I thought of them. I think that they're despicable, they're system pigs, as far as I'm concerned. They exist to serve the corrupt leadership class that we have in the West. That's what they are. And I just despise them, okay? Because they lie. They lie either by telling outright lies, or more often than not, they lie by omission, which is the worst sort of lie. But anyway, I took a ramble around the Krishatik Avenue, and got back to my hotel, and I uploaded all these videos that I'd done, and I went to the smoking lounge to have a cigarette with a very big cup of coffee, extremely big cup of coffee, because, I started smoking again because of the situation, and, I'm stressed out. And I'm there at the smoking lounge, and the hotel manager, whom I'd never met before, a very well put together guy, he seemed like a very capable man. He showed up. He greeted me. He knew who I was exactly. I thought that, I didn't quite understand what was going on. And he identified himself as the manager, and I shook his hand automatically. And I thought maybe he had news as to how to get to Kharkov, because I was stuck in Kiev. For those of you who don't know, I was stuck in Kiev. I arrived on Wednesday afternoon, thinking that the war would not start for at least a couple of weeks, and I had some business that I had to take care of in Kiev, and I was only going to go for a couple of days. I was going to fly in on Wednesday afternoon and fly out on Friday afternoon. In fact, I even debated whether to fly out on Thursday afternoon, but it doesn't matter, because on Thursday morning at 5 a.m., bright and early, the Russians invaded Ukraine. And so I was stuck in my hotel, and when my hotel ended, I'd only booked it for a couple of nights. I booked 7 nights, right off the bat, and thinking to myself that probably it'll last even longer. And the hotel staff, they were very helpful and pleasant, and it was all very, very nice, and I had a wonderful time. I had a couple of run-ins with press people that I've discussed in my Telegram channel. Basically, the press people, a lot of the more highfalutin press people, they were all at the Premier Palace, and they were all just so arrogant. And what I hated in particular, there was one man, a big guy, bigger than me. I mean, like a good 2-3 inches bigger than me, and maybe 40 pounds heavier, carrying a camera and looking with that smug, arrogant face. And the man at the reception desk, the employee who didn't need to be there but was there, right? Well, this photographer, or whatever he was, this big guy from the press, he was berating the guy at the hotel front desk, and berating him because he couldn't get outside or something like that. I forget exactly what it was. And I was like, dude, and I said to him these words. I said, he's trying to help you, you system pig. And he turned on me. And he was a big guy, and he figured that he could intimidate me with his size. And see, my old man was a bully. He bullied the shit out of me. So I know how to handle bullies. And what you do with a bully is that you step right into their fucking face and make it clear that, yeah, you can probably beat the shit out of me, but it's going to cost you. And see, bullies, They always back down when they know it's going to cost them now, don't they? Yeah. Anyway, that was like the one major tiff I had at the hotel, but it was not exceptional because the press people got into tiffs with one another. I saw a couple of times. It was pretty funny. And a few times, a couple of them had complete meltdowns because they thought that they had lost some precious equipment or phone or something like that, and they hadn't. They just simply misplaced it. And in the stress of the moment, they'd forgotten. But anyway, the point is that a lot of people were slightly misbehaving, and you could explain it away, and I certainly explained it away. It's just tension. I mean, come on, you're in the middle of a city that is being surrounded by the Russian army. Of course, you're going to be a little stressed out, man. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so when this hotel manager showed up, I thought that he was there to tell me about how to get to Kharkov, because see, I told everybody in the staff that I was caught in Kiev under the circumstances I explained, and that I wanted to desperately get back to Kharkov, to my family, to my two small children. My son is about to turn 7, and my daughter shortly will turn 9, and they are the most important people in my life. The things, they matter more than anything, more than my own life, quite frankly. And so I was desperate to get back to Kharkov, and from all accounts, it was impossible to get back to Kharkov. And I thought that maybe the hotel manager had come up with some solution, And no, that wasn't it at all. He was there to kick me out. In no uncertain terms, he told me that he wanted me to leave the hotel as soon as possible. And he was very calm and collected about it, very cool, not hysterical or anything. It was a very cool customer. A man who's spent his entire career in the hotel business knows how to handle other people and knows how to keep his cool under pressure. And he was showing it very clearly. And I was just completely taken aback by this, completely caught blindsided. I mean, I never expected in a million years. And I asked him what specifically had I done to warrant this. And he said something that I didn't understand. He said that he didn't want to have any Putin propagandist in his hotel. And that's heavy. And that's real goddamn heavy. You know what I mean? And so I was like, what the hell are you talking about, right? Because I've done a lot of content on the war, of course, but I don't think, you guys tell me if you think that I'm a Putin propagandist just for pointing out things that are actually happening and that how things are going Putin's way, whether we like it or not. Irrespective of where we stand on Putin, well, objectively, he's winning. He's winning this war decisively and extraordinarily quickly. And, to pretend otherwise, just foolish, right? So anyway, I was sort of like taken aback, and the hotel manager was very adamant, but again, in a very calm and collected way. And he said that the front desk would help me to find accommodations elsewhere. And he wanted me out as soon as possible. And, he didn't give me a time frame. But, I assumed, normal checkout times, noonish, 1 p.m., something like that. And so I was just shocked. This all went down right around 11 a.m., okay? Now, I sat there in the smoking lounge, smoking my a couple of cigarettes and trying to figure out what the hell to do. I was just completely taken aback. And I'll just say this. I think it was a really crummy move on the part of the hotel manager of the Premier Palace Hotel to kick out a guy in the middle of a war. Kick out a guy who's staying at your hotel and is counting on the hotel to provide him food and yeah, I don't know why it keeps winking out. At least on my end, it's winking out. Hit me with a Tiffany Dover, if you guys can see me again. I'm assuming so because I'm in color now again. Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, I thought it was a real crummy move to kick a guy out. And he knew that, number one, I don't speak Russian. Number two, I don't have anyone in Kiev because the people I knew in Kiev, they all fled the city, the businessmen that I know. And the reason they fled was that they're terrified of being forcibly conscripted because the Zelensky regime is forcibly conscripting all Ukrainian males between the ages of 18 and 60. And a lot of them are hiding out. precisely because of this. A lot of them fled Kiev and the other major cities precisely because of this measure, because they don't want to be conscripted. Of course not. I mean, who would? I mean, you're a father, a family man. You don't want to be conscripted. You don't know how to fire a weapon or small arms tactics or anything of the sort. You are an accountant or a doctor or a whatever you are, a manager of some sort. You're not equipped to be a soldier. That's insane. But that's what's going on. And so I know the men that I know in Kiev, that I know well or well enough to seek assistance from, well, they'd fled for this reason. The hotel manager knew this, that I really depended on the hotel. And so I thought it was a crummy move, you know? Um, it's just a crummy move. Simple as that. So anyway, that happened. Okay. And so it took me a while to gather myself together. I'm not going to lie. I mean, a surprise like that, anybody is going to take a few minutes to like figure out what's what. And the first thing I did was I realized I had to arrange for another place to stay. And I had some acquaintances that I knew had apartments in Kiev. And I knew they weren't there because of the forced conscription, that they'd left the city. Okay. They didn't leave the city necessarily because they were afraid of the Russian army. They were more afraid of the Ukrainian police showing up and sticking them in a paddy wagon. And the next morning they're waking up in boot camp or whatever. So anyway, so I sent, text messages, telegram messages to a bunch of people, all the people that I knew, telling them, look, I desperately need a place to stay. And I had no interest in taking up the hotel manager's offer of going to a hotel that the reception would arrange for me, because of course the reception would tell the other hotel why I was moving to that hotel. Mhm. And I'm sure that I'm in some black book, and probably I'll never be able to go to any of the good hotels in Kiev ever again, which is lamentable. But I mean, that's life. Oh, and if you ask, what about Airbnb, dude? The city is surrounded. There are no Airbnbs. Nobody's playing that game. Okay. So anyway, and besides, I don't even have an Airbnb account. So what happened? Well, not anymore. I used to, but it's just easier with a hotel. So what happened? So I contacted a bunch of people, and as luck would have it, I mean, and this is, I sent an SMS to, I want to say, a friend of mine. He has become more of a friend because of this incident. He was really an acquaintance, and a distant one at that. And I sent him an SMS in a panic, and copy paste to a whole bunch of people, telling them I desperately need a place, blah blah. And this guy responded almost immediately, and he's like, "Hey, Gonzalo, how's it going? No problem. I've got an apartment that you can use." And I said, "Well, the problem is the keys. How do I get the keys?" And he said, in the first message, he said, "And don't worry about the keys," he said, like he was fucking psychic or something. "Don't worry about the keys. There's a security lockbox, so you'll have no trouble getting in." And he gave me the code and the address. And that was it. I mean, dude, between the time I started in this panic of trying to fix the problem of where I was going to stay and getting this SMS, it couldn't have been more than 15 minutes. 10 minutes, not less than 10 minutes, and not more than 15 minutes. I mean, that fast. I mean, it was like karma, right? And the best part, and here's the best part, see? The best part is that this apartment that he had, that he could lend me, it was, I'm not kidding, like 3/4 of a block away. I didn't even need to get a taxi. I could just walk over there. Which I did. I checked out and I walked over, and it was just so bizarre. And I wound up in this beautiful apartment. I mean, too big for me. It was really like a 3-bedroom apartment, and but with a lovely view and all kinds of wonderfulness, right? And with food. Yeah, I mean, which is a big deal because, everything is closed. There's no food to be found anywhere. The supermarkets are closed, blah, blah. And so, in Kiev at any rate. And so it was just like, holy cow, this is, a disaster befalls me. And pretty as a picture, I land on both feet. So anyway, I was stunned by this, and there I was. I called up my good and great friend, Dr. Benway, with whom I used to do podcasts. Who remembers Dr. Benway? Hit me with a +1 if you remember him and have good wishes for him, because he's aces. He's a great guy. And if you guys remember him, yeah, he's fantastic. So anyway, um, Benway and I talked through this whole situation, and I was like, "What the fuck happened?" I mean, how the fuck did this guy think that I'm some sort of Putin apologist from the content that I was putting up? Because most of it was just geopolitical analysis or, man on the street kind of stuff, you know? I mean, I'm walking around and this is, here's this, here's that, that kind of stuff. And so I figured at the time, and I was talking to Benway, that it must have been some troll, either a Ukrainian guy who's just pissed off at me and pissed off that Ukraine is losing the war, or just some asshole troll. And I got lots of enemies, lots of people who can't stand me. I mean, lots of people who hate my guts, actively hate my guts, right? As good old Kraut. And so, I figured maybe one of them called up the manager, and because I made no secret of where I was staying, because it's my favorite hotel, or it used to be my favorite hotel, and I made no secret that I was staying there, and I thought, maybe some troll called up the hotel, spoke to the manager or something like that, and said, "Go to this timestamp, and you'll see that he's, Putin's stooge," or some shit like that. But that didn't make a hell of a lot of sense. I mean, if I'm a hotel manager in the middle of a situation like this, I'm not going to be worried about some rando, calling me up and shitting on the guest there. I mean, that seemed kind of absurd, but I left that problem on the back burner. And then, well, what happened was that I was at this new location, and I was, between the time I got the news that I was going to be kicked out and the time I'm settled in with everything unpacked and talking to Benway, it was 90 minutes. That's a fact. You can talk to Benway himself. It was that fast. No, actually, I wasn't at that time. I was settled in, but not talking to Benway yet, because with Benway, I talked like around 3. Like around 12:30, yeah, I was settled. It was that fast. It was just like lickety split. Okay. So anyway, I didn't really know what had happened, and I kind of like put that problem on the back burner. And I had a long conversation with Benway, yeah, around like 2:33, something like that. Fairly early. Benway's an early riser, and so we were talking, and then what happened? Oh, right. After we spoke, I was kind of like down in the dumps. It was like around 5 p.m. or so. The curfew was going to be at 10 p.m., and around like 4:35-ish, around that time, I got a message from an old acquaintance of mine that I hadn't spoken to in a couple of years for no reason whatsoever. I mean, we hadn't spoken, we'd broken off, not for any reason, just because, he had moved to Cherkasy, and then he moved someplace else. I think we moved to Kiev and then someplace else, and in Ukraine. And I was wondering where he was. I mean, I told him this disaster, and also I asked where he was, if he was in Kiev or whatever, and he texted me like around 4:30. I sent that message on Telegram around 11, after I spoke with the manager, when I did that blanket reaching out to everybody, "Help me, please," kind of thing. And yeah, so it must have been like 11:30 in the morning. Like around 4:30, close to 5, he texts me back, "Hey, dude, what's it going? How's it going? Blah, blah." And we start chatting, DMing. And I said, "I'm stuck here. I can't get out of Kiev, and go back to Kharkov." And he's like, "What are you talking about? You can go out by train." And I'm like, "No, you can't." And he's like, "Yes, you can." And I'm like, "No, you can't." And he's like, "Dude, do you speak Russian?" Fair point. Low blow, but fair point. Anyway, long story short, he took the trouble to find out about the train schedules and whatnot, and he sent me the information. And the thing is, see, when the war broke out, they canceled all the flights and they canceled all the trains, but they had restarted the trains. Okay, and this is very interesting, it seems to me, because the trains are operating not normally, but they're operating, and they're running to and fro all over the country. And my assistant moved ahead and got me tickets for a trip from Kiev to Kharkov that evening, you know. And long story short, I messaged my friend who'd lent me the apartment and told him, dude, thanks so much, but I'm not going to need it because I'm going to Kharkov. And he said, dude, you're fucking insane. You know, the Russians are going to blow up your train, you know, or some shit like that. Or, well, he didn't point it out. I knew it intuitively. My fear was that the train tracks might be cut and that the train in the middle of the night would hit the broken rails and derail and it'd be a bad accident. Okay. So I was like, dude, you know, I'm gonna go. And what happened also was that, see, when the war started, it was very clear that the road to Kharkov was cut. It was just not accessible. And so I sort of like automatically assumed that the train also was cut. But anyway, the point is it's not cut, or at least not as of this morning, because I took the train. There was a little bit of confusion and a little bit of bullshit, but in the end, I took the train around like 11:30, quarter to 12, and I got to Kharkov, the Kharkov train station at 9:45 this morning. And from there, I walked home because there were no cabs. Everybody was, you know, the train station in Kiev was full of people. I shot some video and I've been trying to upload it to my Telegram channel and I'm having some trouble. And I'm thinking that maybe the Telegram channel, my channel is being fucked with. I wouldn't be surprised because, and I'll explain why in a moment. But anyway, I shot a lot of video on the trip, you know, walking to the station. At the station was totally dark, except for the signs of not all but some of the you know, on the platform above the trains, right? On that platform where everybody walks around, and there are the signs that say, you know, this exit to track 10 or track 20 or whatever. Well, it's only from tracks 2 to 14, but anyway, the signs, those signs were, some of them were illuminated, not all of them, some of them, even though the ones that were not illuminated had a train. It was a little weird. And there was this one big advertisement in the middle of the station that was fully lit with like spotlights on the advertisement. I don't know what the advertisement was for, because it was like, you know, it was like a pretty girl and like written material. I'm like, I don't read Cyrillic, so I have no idea what the hell it was. But anyway, the point, it was completely dark, which I thought was a little weird. I mean, okay, you want it dark so that, you know, the aircraft can't see it, but, you know, modern aircraft have all kinds of very sophisticated equipment that they don't need to see lights to see you. You know, they got infrared and X-ray vision, whatever the fuck, right? So, but anyway, I'm not going to argue with anybody that the whole train station was dark. The trains were dark inside too, okay? And around, I think it was 11:30 or so, I'm hopping on my train and I'm off, you know, and the whole time I don't have any internet, okay? Now, I don't have any internet because for a very stupid reason. This phone that I'm using right now, I'm using it to talk to you guys. Well, it turns out that I had a chip in it from the Netherlands, but that chip doesn't work in the network here in Ukraine. And I never got bothered to get a Ukrainian chip because I have two separate cell phones that I use for other stuff. And one of them is a flip phone. And yeah, people mock me for it, but fuck you. I think it's cool, you know? And what happens is that, you know, I was like, you know, I don't really need to get the chip. And I thought, okay, I'll get around to it. And I never got around to it, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, I really needed the chip that night, last night, because what happened was that, oh, hang on. The other thing that happened last night, which was weird, okay, the flip phone I have, this red flip phone, somehow some people got the number for it. I don't know how exactly. Perhaps it's on my Telegram account. No, that wouldn't be right. I don't know. I don't know how they got it, but they got it. And one guy called me last night in the middle of the night from a Ukrainian number, but he didn't sound Ukrainian. He sounded, frankly, he sounded Indian from India, right? And that was really weird. And he just seemed, he didn't speak in complete sentences. And I don't know what the hell he wanted, right? But anyway, the guy, he wanted to know if I was Gonzalo Lira, and I was like, "Who are you?" Because at first I thought it was the Chilean embassy, the Chilean, not the Chilean embassy, the Chilean, yeah, correctly, the Chilean embassy in Warsaw, because the Chilean embassy in Warsaw is looking after every Chilean citizen in Ukraine. And they have done, by the way, I have to say this publicly, they have done a phenomenal job. Okay. And if you guys from the Chilean embassy are watching this, or if anybody has any contact with them, clip this part here, because they've been outstanding. They've been very concerned about citizens for several weeks, as a matter of fact, calling them up, finding where they are, how many in their family group, if they need to be evacuated out of Ukraine. I mean, really, just first class people. And I just want to say that publicly. And in particular, there's a woman in the Chilean consulate called Alicia. She's, I understand, a Polish national working at the Chilean embassy. She is aces, okay? And I just want to say that, so that gets to them at some point, because they kept calling. I mean, not all the time. I'm not like a crazy girlfriend, but rather calling once in a while to see how you're doing, where are you at, giving you options. Constant text messages started appearing yesterday about the train situation. And I'm guessing, because I'm not clear about what's happened, but I'm guessing that the trains started going back online yesterday to move people around, I guess. Because all of a sudden, the Chilean embassy started posting all these SMS messages of train schedules and whatnot, and very useful information. So it's just, yeah, it's been great. And I thought that this call might be from the embassy, but no, it was this random guy, and he hung up, and I tried to call back, and it was just busy or went straight to voicemail, and I was like, okay, screw it, some rando. But then later, like at 3 in the morning or something like that, I got a text message from a German number telling me, hang on, I'll get the message. Let me get my phone. Hang on. Yes, and I'm in boxer shorts, and it's my house, and I can chill out and walk around in boxer shorts if I so see fit. Yeah, yeah, and I got better, hairier legs than you, motherfucker. So I win. Hang on. Let me get to this. Uh, okay, I'm not going to show the number. Okay. Because this guy, I'm not going to show his number, so I have the courtesy of him not showing my number. I hope you can see it there. I got it at 148 this morning, right? And I'll read it to you. Are you doing well? Question mark. Your community is worried about you because you appeared on the national Russian TV as a Putin supporter, which could bring you in a dangerous situation. If you don't have internet, just call me and I can record a voice message for your community as a proof of live, period. Good night. I mean, to tell you the truth, I was, whoever this person was, thank you. I mean, really, it was a very nice thing to do. It's a little unnerving to, and this asshole is, he's on, and he said, he's texting me again. I'm not kidding. I'm gonna again, just now, this fucker is, and here is the proof. I don't want to show his number again because, common courtesy. But he says, "Happy birthday, Gonzalo!" Exclamation mark. Just saw your stream. You sent me your phone number last year regarding oh. Oh, okay. No. Okay, dude, I'm gonna call you later. Okay, because I sent him my number regarding some issue of last year. I just wanted to clear this thing up so you don't have to worry about. Okay, dude, I forgot. I mean, I hate to sound like a fucking dickhead, but it's slipped my mind. So I'm going to, after this live stream, assuming that the Alzheimer's doesn't keep me from remembering, I'm going to send you a message and or give you a call and thank you. Okay. I don't want to sound like a fucking asshole, but it slipped my mind, man. And no disrespect. On the contrary, thank you very much for giving me this heads up that I'd what you call it, that my commentary had been used by this Russian TV network, and that's the reason that the manager at the hotel kicked me out of the hotel. It was because this piece, I saw it, by the way. It's 6 minutes 43 seconds, I believe, and it's in Russian with no subtitles. And when I speak like in the background, and somebody else translates. And I showed it to a couple of Russian speakers, and they said that they were like, the visceral hatred of it, number one, and that, yeah, I come across as a Putin stooge. And I'm like, oh man, I mean, shit. Okay, and so I've put disclaimers on my channel, on my Telegram, on my Patreon, telling everybody that I'm not paid by anybody. I've never been paid by anybody. I've never been sponsored by anybody, by a company or a government or an NGO. Never. Okay. The only income I've ever received from my hobby is Google AdSense and getting paid by subscribers who are just audience members who like my content and want me to produce content just for them, and that's it. I've never gotten any kind of sponsorship of any government or any company or any NGO. I want to make that really clear. And the times I've appeared on television, I have appeared on RTTV back in between 2010, I believe, and 2013. And that was because of like some macroeconomic commentary that I was doing. I was doing a blog about macroeconomic issues. And some of it was pretty popular, and some of it picked up a lot of views. And so they had me on to talk about it, to talk about macroeconomic stuff. And then when I moved to Paris, what was it, in 2011? I moved to Paris, and the RT TV station, they had a broadcasting center there. And so I knew a couple of people there, and, more or less for fun and as a favor, I'd pop in once in a while to do commentary and talk about shit, because I got to be friendly with a couple of the producers there and whatnot. And so, like that, it was like a casual, just for fun thing. You get to be on TV and seem clever, why not, right? So anyway, but that's the extent of my TV, and I was never paid for any TV appearance ever. Okay, it was just for fun, just yeah, because it's fun. So anyway, yeah, where was I? Oh yeah, so I watched this piece, and what happened, of course, was that it used some of my commentary from a previous stream, like a stream I did a couple of days ago, and that was the stream. I mean, those were the clips, or let me rephrase that. This propaganda piece that was assembled by the Russian TV using my content, well, that's what set off the manager. Now, personally, I still think it's a crummy thing what he did of kicking me out in the middle of a war when he knew my circumstances and how fragile my situation really was. I mean, in a foreign city, don't speak the language. All of my contacts have fled, and I'm stuck in that city at the mercy of the hotel, basically, and the hotel is kicking me out. That was low. I mean, let me ask you, chat. Do you think that that was low? If you think it was low, write LO. If you think it was okay, write okay. I'll wait for you guys to catch up. If you think it was low, say LO. And if you think it was okay, say okay. Yeah, lots of, some okays. Good on you. I think it was low, to tell you the truth. Because whatever you might think of somebody, when they're in obvious need of assistance in such a situation, you can't act that way based on political beliefs or whatever. And on top of that, they were clipping what I said, the content that I made. And anybody with even a little bit of sophistication knows that a clip, a short clip of somebody saying something doesn't mean anything. I mean, you can you can clip part of a speech and it sounds as if the guy is, in favor of Hitler, and it turns out that he's a Jewish guy talking about how Hitler was very attractive to certain people during the 1930s. I mean, you see my point. See, you can clip things out of context and twist around what the person is actually trying to communicate very easily, especially in a live stream like I did, which was like a couple of hours long. And I thought it was low. I mean, it was really, it affected me to a surprising degree, to tell you the truth. Not at the moment, because I'm very good at when I have a crisis, kind of like putting my emotional reaction to that event on the back burner and focusing on solving the problem. I was talking about this with Benway, that for a certain type of guy, a certain kind of guy who's grown up in the system, we get off on solving problems, because whenever we solve the problem, we got a little gold star. We got that little rush of dopamine, whatever, right? Our little dopamine fix. And so it was great to solve this problem, because it was a complicated problem, and it was solved so effortlessly. I was just like, yay, man. I mean, karma is on my side. I actually think that this hotel manager, I am insisting publicly, please do not contact him. Please do not abuse him in any way or harass him in any way. I actually don't know his name even. He's the general manager of the hotel, but he told me his name, but the shock of it, I just forgot his name, man. And he didn't give me a card, he didn't say, call me whenever you're in town again, no, none of that. But I'm asking you, please do not harass him. Please do not contact him. Just let karma take care of it. Because just as karma took care of me in this situation, where I hadn't done anything, because when you look at the clips that were used by this Russia propaganda piece, the Russian television piece, it seems very favorable towards Vladimir Putin and very negative towards the United States on a very specific issue of how you go about conquering a country. And I'll say this right here now. I think that the way the United States conquers countries and invades countries is really despicable. And it is. Because what they do is that they use air power to just annihilate an entire country, destroy all the infrastructure, the civilian infrastructure. They cause all kinds of civilian problems and destroy everything. And then after a few weeks of this demolition of the whole country, then they roll in. That's not fighting. No, that's mopping up. Mopping up the mess that your air power inflicted, indiscriminately inflicted. I think that's despicable. And that's the American mode of war. I vehemently opposed it, of course, because, it's all good and fine that you want to get rid of the political leadership of some country, but you don't have to destroy the fucking country to do that. And I contrasted that with the way that Vladimir Putin is carrying out this war. And this war currently, the way he is doing it, he is hitting the military, but he's leaving the civilian population untouched. And I'm going to comment in just a little bit about the rocket attack in the central square here in Kharkov. This central square is about roughly 1.5 kilometers away, about a mile from where I live, okay? And I've been to the place that was absolutely annihilated, absolutely destroyed numerous times. There's Citrus, which is an electronics store, that was destroyed. And there's also, right around the corner, you don't see it in the video, there's a McDonald's. Oh, here we go, yeah. So as I was saying, I know that corner really, really well. On the side facing the square, there's a Citrus, and further down there's this hoity-toity women's clothing store. And also there's a restaurant I've gone to a couple of times. I'd like a fancy burger kind of steakhouse kind of place. Very nice. And yeah, that seemed to have been destroyed probably, but it was slightly down the street, so maybe it was not hit. Be that as it may. And around the corner there's a McDonald's, and between the McDonald's around the corner and on the front side facing the square, the Citrus, around the corner side, there is a money exchange, and also a little store. Actually, I don't know if it's still there or not. I haven't checked, but there was a little store. Well, it's definitely not there now. There's a little store that sold souvenirs, and I actually bought my first Ukrainian souvenirs there. They're a pair of socks, of like ankle socks. That on the fringe of it, it had it was like beige colored socks, very comfy. And on the fringes of it, it was blue and yellow, the Ukrainian colors. Yeah, that was the very first souvenir I bought in Ukraine in 2013, I think. Anyway, um, oh yeah, in my commentary, in my stream, which a lot of you must have seen, what happened was that I said that the way the Russians were carrying out this war was, I mean, they were trying to capture the Ukrainian army and capture the country without breaking it. Okay, that was my key insight. And like I said, I don't know Russian, so I don't know exactly what this Russia television piece said. But like I said, Russian speakers have said that I came across as a Putin apologist when I'm not. I am, to put it very precisely, I am indifferent to Vladimir Putin. Okay. Do I think that he's a ruthless guy? Fucking A. Yeah. Do I think that he's a bloodthirsty egomaniac who's crazy? No. He's a rational actor. You like it or not. You can disagree with the reasons why he's doing something, but he's got reasons, and they're very good reasons. Okay. And that's the thing that I object to so much about the current hysteria, is that Vladimir Putin is, Vlad the crazy, but he's got very, very good reasons for what he's doing. And anyone with a little bit of honesty and a little bit of brains recognizes that. And the fact is that the Western powers want to cover that up at all costs. And it seems increasingly clear that this propaganda, this media hysteria, is to prime people to go ahead and get into a war with Russia, which I think would be catastrophic for the West. I think that the West would lose militarily and decisively, okay? Because from what I am seeing of this invasion, the Russians know what they're doing, okay? They're winning. I wrote this on my Telegram, that the Ukrainians are winning the information war, but the Russians are winning the actual war. And in the end, only one matters. Well, guess which one? And so the Ukrainians keep winning the information, the propaganda war. The Zelensky regime is very, very good at it. But the Russians keep capturing cities. And the word I'm hearing from independent sources, not propaganda from either side, it seems clear that the Russians are carrying out a cauldron operation, which is basically an encirclement maneuver, whereby on one side they attack a position, an enemy position, and from the two flanks, they outflank in a pincer move around the opponent and capture him. And that's what they seem to be doing in the east of Ukraine. And it seems that they are within days or perhaps hours of capturing some 45,000 Ukrainian soldiers, capturing them in this cauldron. That would likely mean the end of the war, quite frankly. I mean, the Ukrainian army has 250,000 soldiers, sure, but they're not all combat soldiers. But here, the 45,000 that are going to be captured, these seem to be, a goodly chunk of combat soldiers. If they're captured like this, and the numbers I'm hearing are between 45 and 60,000, okay, so let's just take it on the low end of 45,000. That breaks the back of the Ukrainian armed forces. See, and I'm not saying this to belittle Ukrainians, the Ukrainian people, or the Ukrainian armed forces. No, I'm not saying it to belittle it. I'm not saying it as a fanboy of the Russians. I'm simply looking at the facts and making an honest judgment. And that's the whole point. That's what I want to do. And that's why I've never taken sponsorship. I've been offered sponsorship deals lots of times, by VPNs, by video games and shit like that, lots of times. But I decided that in the end, it's just not worth the trouble, because if you take money from a sponsor, it's always like, oh, is he being honest, or is he pushing some little product or something like that? Or is he pushing some narrative, like a government pushes a narrative? And so I've always been very negative on the whole notion of sponsorships. I don't have any sponsorship. And that way, quite frankly, there's that old saying that, you don't need much to remember when you tell the truth. Yeah, exactly. When you are sponsored, when you are pushing a narrative for money, you have a lot of things that you have to remember. And me, I don't have to remember anything. I can just speak my mind and say what I actually think. That's the point of the content that I create, okay? That I say what I genuinely think. And what I genuinely think at this time is that the Ukrainian armed forces are losing. It seems to me very obvious that even though I'm not a military expert by any stretch of the imagination, not even close, but in comparison to other invasions of other large territories, large countries, this invasion seems to be one of the fastest in history that has covered more ground and captured more ground than any in living memory. And whenever people talk about, like, say, the Second World War and how the German army captured Poland, well, it took them 35 days to capture half the country. The other half was captured by the Soviet Union, if you recall. And many people try to forget that, and they try to forget the fact that Winston Churchill said that England had to go to war to defend Poland, but he only went to war with the Germans, not with the Soviets. Yeah, what does that tell you? Huh? But let's not get into that historical quagmire. Let's talk about the current performance of the Russian military. There are people, a lot of people, some wags on the internet and whatnot, who keep insisting that Vladimir Putin is losing, that the Russian army is losing, that they're not, doing the job, they're not getting the job done right. And I'm like, are you looking at a map? Are you even looking at a map and understand the speed at which it takes to capture a country the size of Ukraine? Okay. I mean, do you understand what you're talking about? It's like saying, a runner is so slow because he only runs the 100-meter dash in 9 seconds. A car can do it in 3 seconds. And you're like, what are you talking about? I mean, you see my point. It's kind of like that. It's just bizarre. And it comes from the fact that most people get their pseudo knowledge of reality from comic book movies, quite frankly. They think that the comic book movies that they watch are reality or versions of reality when they're not. They're fantasies, and childish fantasies at that do not correspond to reality at all. And it's perfectly normal for an advancing army that is in fact winning to lose soldiers either killed in action or captured by the enemy. It's perfectly normal. It happens all the time. It's not unusual at all. And so I'm like, yeah, sure, the Russians have lost soldiers and they've had soldiers captured and put on TV, but that doesn't mean anything, I mean, when you have an operation like this with tens of thousands of soldiers, it's inevitable that you're going to lose soldiers either killed in action, wounded in action, or captured by the enemy. It's inevitable. And so just because it happens doesn't mean anything. You see what I'm saying? But a lot of wags seem to think this, and they're creating a false sense of security. They seem to be convinced that the Russians are going to lose. And the reality is no. And it points to something that I think is very troubling. It points to the fact that people believe their own bullshit. And they think that reality will conform to their bullshit. That if they just bullshit enough, that reality will somehow turn their way and they'll win. That's not how it works, see? And what happens is that a lot of these people, they work in these so-called creative professions in the West, where narrative skill, the ability to bullshit, helps. It helps advance your career. So it seems as if bullshit is reality, but in reality, it's not. Sorry for the weird turn of phrase, but I think that you get what I'm saying. Just because you want something to happen really, 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 really badly doesn't mean it's gonna happen. And just because you start taking with tweezers random events and from these random events try to construct a narrative doesn't mean that narrative is even remotely akin to the reality that's happening. There was one tweet I reposted on my Telegram as a screen grab. And the tweet was that the Russians aren't bothering with propaganda, that the Ukrainians are winning the propaganda. The Zelensky regime, let's talk about the Zelensky regime, which I despise, and I'm going to explain why in just a moment. I truly despise the Zelensky regime. And if this means that my life in Ukraine becomes intolerable because of why I despise the Zelensky regime, that's perfectly fine. But I'm not going to mince any words insofar as the Zelensky regime. It is an evil regime, and that's it. And I'll explain why in just a moment. But to get back to the issue of bullshit and narrative, see, the Russians are not engaging in any kind of propaganda war, not a serious, big kind of way, because they don't need to, because they're winning the war, the actual war, the war on the ground, the war of territory, of capturing territory, of capturing enemy soldiers, of capturing cities. They're winning that war, okay? And they've done it in 5 days, which is unheard of. Like I said, it took the German army 35 days to capture their half of Poland. 35 days. It took the United States in 2003, 3 weeks to reach Baghdad, even though they had leveled the whole country with air power in the weeks before the actual invasion. It took them 3 weeks to capture Baghdad. And here, 5 days in, the Russians are saying, we will allow you to exit on such and such a highway because we guarantee the security of it because we control it, okay? And the mayor of Ukraine let slip in an interview with the Associated Press that the Russians have surrounded Kiev. And that's a fact, okay? And then later he backtracked and no, not quite. It's not quite like that, and trying to fix the narrative. But again, narrative doesn't mean shit. At the end of the day, it's reality that matters. And the reality is that the Russians are encircling the city. They control it with enough confidence that they can tell civilians, okay, if you want to leave, this is the road to take. You can take it and you will exit the city and no problem. And also apparently they seem to have guaranteed, this I have not heard an actual announcement, but de facto they have guaranteed the safety of the train system, of the railing system, which is why I was able to leave Kiev and come to Kharkov. So, and it's how a lot of people are exiting Kiev and going to Poland and Hungary and points west. And so the point I'm trying to make, all the bullshit in the world is not going to change the fact that the Russians are winning. Now, there's some other things that we can point to that prove that the Zelensky regime is losing, okay? The fact that they are forcibly conscripting people, okay? That shows that they're not winning, because you don't need to forcibly conscript people if your armies are confidently defending your country. The fact that he has given weapons willy-nilly to civilians, and this is a fact, and it's not just the word of some people. They've said so. They've shown video of it, of the distribution of AK-74 assault rifles to random civilians, and these random civilians are eventually turning them over or selling them to criminals. And of course, the criminals themselves are helping themselves to these weapons. And so in one of the videos I did yesterday, I was wandering around and I was filming, and in the middle of it, I heard gunshots nearby. I mean, the Russian army at that point, when I recorded that, on the morning of February 28th, the Russian army was, tens of kilometers away, and the gunshot was within 1,000 meters. So clearly, score settling that was probably it. Something was going on there. And there have been reports that there's been a lot of score settling among the criminal element. And of course, what will happen is that the criminal element will sort itself out insofar as the weapons are concerned. And once they've sorted themselves out in their hierarchy, they're going to turn those weapons that the government gave them on the civilians and start abusing the civilians. And I know personally of one case where apparently criminals were trying to break into a shelter during the night. Yeah, and they were threatening to use weapons that they'd gotten from the Zelensky regime. I know this for a fact. A person that I'm not going to name who it was, but I've known this person for a decade now. Absolutely. I mean, this is absolutely true. Okay. And so this is happening. Lawlessness is being brought to Ukraine by the Zelensky regime. Another thing that the Zelensky regime is doing, and this has been confirmed by photographic evidence and also, testimonial of people who've been there, that the Zelensky regime is positioning heavy weaponry in the middle of civilian population centers, apartment complexes, and whatnot. And there's one famous picture that's floating around on the Chans that shows two howitzers that are in the middle of a apartment complex. Yeah, they're actually set up these two howitzers. And by the way, why did you set up two howitzers one next to the other? That doesn't make any sense, but okay, be that as it may. These two howitzers are set up on a football pitch, association football pitch. And they're there, they're being manned right in the middle of a bunch of apartment complexes. Now, first of all, firing those howitzers will shatter half the windows every time, okay? You're going to wind up with no windows. And here we are coming to the end of the winter. It's been fairly mild, but still winter. It's still cold, But quite apart from that, see, the Russian army, I mean, they want to take out any howitzer now, don't they? Of course they do. So they're going to fire on that howitzer. And of course, they're going to miss the first few times because it's inevitable. It's war, okay? It's not a precise science, right? It's not like you have pinpoint accuracy and take out the howitzer, bing, like that, and no problem. No, you got to fire half a dozen shells at it before you hit the damn thing. And those 5 other shells that don't hit the howitzer, they're going to hit the people now, aren't they? Yeah? Yeah. And then what's the Zelensky regime going to say? Oh, look at the Russians committing atrocities against civilians. Or they're going to say, the Zelensky regime is going to say, oh, look at the Russians, shooting poor civilians, and it's really, gangs shooting each other. Or civilians who've been bamboozled into picking up one of those AK-74s and fighting Russian soldiers who are disciplined and trained, and these civilians, are not. And these poor civilians get taken out in the first 5 seconds because they don't know what they're doing. And the Russian soldiers, whatever you might think of them on a moral level, they know what they're doing. And so they're going to shoot these civilians who are armed because, of course, I mean, I'm sorry, but, you have a gun, I have a gun, and you're pointing it at me. I'm sorry, I'm going to take you out. Fuck yeah, come on, And so, but the Zelensky regime will be able to say that, oh, the Russians are shooting civilians, And all these policies, you start to look at them and you realize what the Zelensky regime is really doing. They are trying to create a humanitarian crisis. They are trying to get dead civilians killed on tape, on video, in pictures, so they can emotionally blackmail the West into getting involved in this war against Russia. That's what the Zelensky regime is doing. And that's the only conclusion that you can come to. Now, I'm going to say something that a lot of people in Kharkov are going to be furious at me about, but I have to speak the truth, and I have to speak what I honestly think. There is famous video footage that's floating around of that shell or missile. It's not clear what it was, if it was a shell or a missile, or at least at this time, as I'm speaking to you, it's not clear, because it happened at 8 a.m. this morning. Now, this shell or missile that destroyed the building there, the Citrus and the McDonald's that I was talking about before, that whole corner of the building, right on the central square of Kharkov. Well, if we're being really honest, hand to heart, I'm not really sure that the Russians did it. I'm sorry. At this time, considering what the Russians have done and how hard the Russian military has hit military targets but abstained from civilian targets, considering how right now I am speaking to you in Kharkov, a city surrounded by the Russians, and I have running water, electricity, sewage, cell phone, internet, and you're telling me that the Russians, for no reason whatsoever, are going to fire a rocket right into the middle of the city, causing needless damage to an important building. I forget what the building is, but it's an important building, causing needless damage to an important building and handing a PR disaster to the Ukrainian Zelensky regime. That doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, just looking at it just does not make any sense to me, okay? Especially considering that no other shell from the Russians fell anywhere close. It just does not make any sense. And by the way, the thing that apparently this rocket or shell was targeting was a Ukrainian army, one of these places where you can join, like a recruiting station. That's it. Sorry, Alzheimer's, the jab, all that. It seemed that this shell was targeting this recruiting station. Also, I find it very odd how, I'm sorry, again, you can say that I'm a schizo, you can say whatever, but I found it very odd how perfectly framed the camera was to capture this missile strike or shell, okay? Again, I don't know, let's assume it's a missile. It just seems too perfect that they were waiting for it. And it just doesn't make any sense because the Russians have gone out of their way not to hurt civilian infrastructure. I'm sorry, and if this makes me a Putin shill, fine, call me a Putin shill, call me a Nazi, call me evil, call me, whatever. I'm a vampire, werewolf, evil demon from hell. But I mean, I'm sorry, it just doesn't make any sense, It just doesn't, it just doesn't, the bullshit meter is off the charts, okay? I'm sorry, I got to call him like I see him, okay? Some people yesterday when I posted the video of me wandering around Krishalik and hearing those gunshots, there were repeated gunshots. They must have been, I don't know, maybe between half a dozen and a dozen, I think. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They were clearly within 1,000 meters of me. And it was like the one weapon. You could tell it was just one weapon. Now, I know that wasn't Russian military. I mean, I know it because the Russian military was nowhere near it, okay? And somebody in the chat on my Telegram channel was saying, well, what if it was? Well, how? If the Russian soldiers at that time were at least 20 kilometers away from that position, how on earth could it possibly be the Russians? And they're like, oh, you're just making an inference. Well, yeah, how do you make logic? You make inferences based on data that you know. If you know that the Russians are at least minimum 20 to 30 kilometers away, and that's the forward positions, right? And you know that the Zelensky regime has been handing out weapons willy-nilly to civilians, and these weapons from the civilians are filtering to criminal elements, and it's filtering real fucking fast, right? Well, it's an obvious inference that, yeah, that shooting was probably some criminals either robbing somebody or something going down, I mean, that's the obvious inference. You can't tell me that it was the Russian soldiers because the Russian soldiers were fucking 20 kilometers away, man, and it was known. So don't give me this bullshit that it was the Russians who did it, insofar as that shooting yesterday that I recorded, right? Now, insofar as this missile strike, it just doesn't make sense, It just doesn't. And again, there was no, the Russians have been hitting military targets, and they've been hitting them hard, okay? And the footage that's shown of them hitting military targets scares the shit out of me. And they're not making any bones about it. They're going after military targets with their helicopters and rockets from those helicopters, all kinds of doodads that, sparks flying and all over the place, right? But they're not hitting civilian targets. Why would they shoot a missile at a civilian building that has no military value whatsoever in the middle of Kharkov, in this main square in Kharkov, and perfectly captured by that CCTV camera? And I'm not saying that the CCTV camera was placed there deliberately. I'm saying it was probably there, and somebody decided, oh, it would be great if like a missile went right there. It just doesn't make any sense. And it makes a hell of a lot more sense to think that maybe somebody besides the Russians deliberately shot that missile or rocket or shell or whatever the hell it was into that building to get that perfect video for purposes other than winning a military victory. Or perhaps winning a military victory in a more roundabout way, i.e., by pulling in the countries of NATO and the United States into this war. I mean, I'm sorry, the Ghost of Kiev. Anybody? The 13 brave, Russian ship. Fuck you, and they all died. Remember that meme that some wokester would do something ridiculous, and at the end, the wokester would say, and then everybody who was watching, everyone clapped, right? And now it's like, and they said "fuck you" to the Russians, and then everybody died. It's kind of like that, and everybody died. It sounds like bullshit, okay? And this missile, and it happened, what time is it? I forgot what time it is. I've gone 70 minutes into this, so it's 4 p.m., about 8 hours ago. I just don't buy it, okay? And if you show me proof that it was definitely the Russians, and you show me like targeting that it came from this position of the Russians, okay, no problem. I mean, the thing is, see, I'm not closed-minded about it. I'm not at all. And it could very well be that the Russians did it on purpose. And it could very well be that the Russians did it by accident, because people today don't seem to understand that a lot of death and destruction that happens, especially to civilians, a lot of times it was unintentional. The people pulling the trigger had no intention of hurting, the grandmothers and whomever who get killed. But it's an accident because it's industrial warfare, man. This is what happens, okay? So anyway, I'm not saying that it couldn't have been an accident that the Russians did it. And I'm not saying that it couldn't have been the Russians who deliberately did it. I'm not saying that it's beyond the realms of the possible. It could be that some Russian lieutenant or whomever decided, fuck these Yukis, man. I'm going to show them, and I'm going to just, bomb the fuck out of them so they know what's what, and that I'm a Ruski and I win. I got a bigger dick than them. Maybe that happened, okay? And if that happened and you show me, trajectories and this and that, the other, that proves conclusively that, it was shot from a Russian position, no problem. I'm not going to dispute it. At this time, it seems, no, I just don't buy it, okay? I don't buy it, and the motivation for one side is very, very clear for it to be true, just as it was very, very clear for them to believe that, the Ghost of Kiev was real. And by the way, parenthetically, you guys saw that ridiculous tweet by that imbecile who said how, even if the story of the Ghost of Kiev is not true, we should still believe it because it gives us hope and courage and blah, blah. What the fuck, man? Believing in fairy tales? That's perfectly fine for children. I have small children. And they believe in some ridiculous things because they're small, okay? They are in the single digits in age-wise, you know what I'm saying? And so, of course, they believe in some things that we as adults, we indulge them. We indulge them because we love them, okay? And it gives them happiness to believe in some, various nonsenses, yeah? But when you're talking to an adult, a grown woman here, yeah, who believes or wants to believe some nonsense, I mean, come on, man. What the hell? But this is the problem of the narrative, of believing bullshit at the expense of understanding reality. Reality eventually is going to hit you upside the head, and it's not going to be fucking pretty, like what's happening right the fuck now, It's real fucking interesting. The Russians keep winning territory and towns, keep, just winning the whole fucking thing, right? But like you go on Twitter and it looks as if the Russians are about to collapse. They're going to collapse right into a total conquest of the country, And what I object to so much is how the people in the West fool themselves, and they're not realistic, see? And there's nothing more pathetic than adults who do not want to look at reality. And these adults who do not want to look at reality, all of a sudden they start trying to twist reality with their words, with their bullshit, and shut down anybody who speaks the truth. They try to put that little boy who says, hey, that man has no clothes, they try to put that little boy in jail. That's what they try to do. That's what they are doing. And it's giving people a radically false sense of security. And eventually, when reality hits them, it's going to be doubly shocking. They're just not going to know how to handle it, you know? And it's just a bunch of lies. Okay, that's the thing that bothers me so much, you know? Because see, life is very difficult. It's exceedingly difficult to get through life successfully. And very few people, in fact, are successful at life. Very few. Okay? Even those people that you think from the outside are very successful because they have money, they have women, they have this, that, the other. Many times, on closer inspection, you realize that they have failed and failed greatly. But the thing is, see, you are guaranteed failure if you do not look reality in the face. If you do not look at things as they are and say, hey, this is the way things are. I don't like it. I hate it. I want to change this reality, but this is the way things are. The first step to real growth and real progress and real of truly building something is to look at the reality in the face. And most of the times, when you look at reality, it's bitter, it's distasteful, it hurts. But that's life. That's the life of being an adult. And it seems to me that so many people today are fools and children. The people in command and in control of the situation, fools and children. Yeah, they walk around in the bodies of responsible adults, but they're just fools or children. And it's all about their feelings and the narrative, and they want to just bullshit their way to a happier world. It doesn't work that way, man. Come on. Bullshit never built anything. The only thing that bullshit built was more bullshit. Vladimir Putin, and I've said this before, you guys have got to read the speech, Empire of Lies. He gave it on the 24th of February. I believe it was the 24th or perhaps the 25th. I'm getting the days mixed up. But that speech is extremely important, okay? He lays out why he's invading Ukraine. And you might disagree with it, but his motivation is sound. It's rational. And his motivation is that essentially Ukraine was becoming his own Cuban Missile Crisis. If you recall, in 1962, the Soviet Union started installing intermediate-range ballistic missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads to Washington and New York on short notice. And the United States had a complete meltdown over that, justifiably so. And the United States and the Soviet Union nearly went to nuclear war over those missiles in Cuba. The Cuban Missile Crisis, look it up. And that is exactly what the United States is trying to do by trying to get Ukraine to join NATO. And here we are. Now, everybody's talking about sanctions and the economic war on Russia and whatnot. And I'll tell you right now, anybody talking about that just doesn't know what they're talking about. They have no fucking idea. Okay? And let me spell out a few realities for you. At this time, it seems very obvious that that Russia will capture and control Ukraine within the next, certainly within the next 30 days. I mean, just to be very conservative about it, and just the next 30 days, that seems pretty obvious. Now, it seems very clear that the Zelensky regime is trying all it can to create an insurgency in Ukraine. And of course, they're trying to create this insurgency because they know that they're going to lose the war, the actual war of the soldiers. They're trying to create an insurgency that will, of course, it will destroy Ukraine. It will destroy it, okay? And it seems clear that Zelensky himself wants to, defend his position to the last Ukrainian. That's what he seems, hell-bent for leather on doing. Yeah, I mean, I despise the man, okay? Because what he's doing, he is willing to destroy the Ukrainian people so that he can hold on. Yeah. And he does all this bullshit talk, to impress the Europeans and whatnot, and he's going to position himself so that he's got a comfy situation later on, and you can tell, he's one of those guys. Anyway, the point, see, the Russians are going to control Ukraine, whether you like it or not, in the next 30 days. And look, to the people who are Ukrainian, who are listening to me, and those who have a deep attachment to Ukraine, as I do. I've lived here, my children are Ukrainian, my wife is Ukrainian, I built a life here in Ukraine. I love Ukraine. I mean, I truly do. And frankly, if we're being honest, I prefer it to Russia. Mm. I like the Ukrainian people, how kind they are. They're very gentle people, um, and very stoic, but they don't have the hardness that the Russians have, the hardness and the harshness. They are much more gentle and much more humane as a people. Mm. And so I love being in Ukraine. And precisely because I care about Ukrainians, I think it's important to speak the truth and not swallow lies or propaganda or wishful thinking or bullshit. Call it what you will, but you have to look at reality in the face. And it gives me no satisfaction whatsoever to say that the Russians are going to pretty much control the country in 30 days. None whatsoever. This is not something that I'm cheerleading for, man. I mean, I want to be that and make that really, really clear. And you who are Ukrainian, you have my complete sympathy and sorrow. All of it. This is what's happening. And it's a disaster, and it's a disaster that could have been avoided. And there were a number of moments when this could have been avoided. But it seems to me that the great failure here was of the Ukrainian leadership that allowed itself to be egged on by the Europeans and by NATO and by the United States. And they became convinced that they, a small country, Ukraine is a small country, a weak country, a poor country, they could go toe-to-toe against the Russians, and that they would have the support of the Europeans and the Americans, and that that's how they would win. And it turned out that they were sorely mistaken. It turned out that at the moment of truth, the Americans and the Europeans and NATO as an organization just stepped back and refused to join Ukraine to defend itself. And all of a sudden, Ukraine finds itself naked and overrun by the Russians. And so Zelensky now seems intent on creating some sort of partisan, organized militia, something like, basically guerrilla warfare against the Russians. And that will only destroy Ukraine, the infrastructure, the buildings, the cities. It will destroy that, and it will lead to untold casualties for no reason. I mean, there's no purpose to it, especially considering the fact that the Russians are very clear what they want. They want to change in the political leadership. They don't want to change Ukraine. They don't necessarily want to annex any part of Ukraine. In point of fact, I would argue that they probably don't. They don't want the hassle of it long term. Just as, for instance, with Belarus or with Kazakhstan, they control politically those two countries. The political leadership of those two countries is essentially controlled by Russia and the Kremlin. But those countries are independent. They're separate entities. And the people of those two countries live their lives not under the yoke of the Russians. And you say that that's wrong, that Belarus and Kazakhstan should be free of any kind of control from the Kremlin. Well, yeah, sure, but tell me about Mexico and Canada again, huh? Who pulls the strings in Mexico and Canada? Riddle me this. And who pulls the strings in Germany and to an extent even in France? And then all the other small nations of the European Union, Spain, Italy, Portugal, what have you. Who pulls the strings there? Are we being honest? Are we being really looking at the truth? Great powers always dominate their neighbors. This is, dude, man, this is History 101, okay? And you may not like it. You may think it's grossly unfair that small nations should be able to determine their own future and determine their own organization as they see fit. Yes, it's grossly unfair, but that's the reality because life is unfair. Like, for instance, the Hungarians. The Hungarians want to have their own path. They don't want to embrace the liberal values of the European unions. How is it going for them? Well or badly? It's going badly for them. And I am completely sympathetic with the Hungarians, but they are becoming part of the Globo Homo Borg, quite frankly. And there isn't a hell of a lot that Hungary can do about it because because Germany and France and the other nations of the European Union are far more powerful than Hungary. And so the Hungarians do what the more powerful countries want. And yeah, Viktor Orban is putting up some resistance, but eventually he'll be out of the picture. Just if only because he'll grow too old to actually rule, which is inevitable. And so yeah, I mean, the bigger powers always control and dominate the smaller countries around them. It's inevitable. Okay, and the United States and the imperial army it has created in the shape of NATO, because that's what it is. It's an imperial army. Well, they came awfully close to taking in Ukraine and parking themselves right in front of Russia with potentially nuclear missiles on Ukrainian soil aimed at Russia, just like Cuba in 62. And the Russians decided, fuck it, let's do a preemptive war to prevent that. It's a preemptive war, and it's also a preventive war, because the Russians realized that if Ukraine joins NATO, then Russia would be fighting all the countries of NATO. So you tell me, do you want to fight like a dozen guys all at once, and one really big, like one big hobgoblin orc kind of guy, like in the Lord of the Rings, that thing, whatever it was called, right? Do you want to fight that army of 12 with a giant, right? Or do you want to fight the one guy? You want to fight the one guy. So that's why the Russians went ahead and invaded Ukraine. It's far more sophisticated and complex than that, but it's basically that. Because they didn't want a nuclear weapon on Ukrainian soil aimed at the Russians. Simple as that. It's justifiable. It's the reason John Kennedy almost went to nuclear war with the Soviet Union in 1962. He could not accept nuclear weapons on Cuba. And he was justified. I mean, have you ever heard of any historian who said, oh no, the Cubans should be free to join any alliance that they want, and if they want to put weapons, in their beaches aimed at America, that's perfectly fine. Have you ever heard anyone say something that fucking stupid, huh? I mean, please, honesty here? Of course not, okay? Anyway, the point. The war now, it's going economic, right? Because this is hybrid warfare. Hybrid warfare, it's warfare on all fronts, not just military, but also informational, cyber attacks, all that shit, propaganda, all that shit, and also financial. Now, here's something really interesting. I'm going to be discussing this on the Duran today because I'm going to be on their show later today. I'm looking forward to it. The Duran, by the way, the great guys, and Alex Christoforou and Alexander Mercouris, they are terrific guys, sharp as all get out, and they have the best geopolitical analysis on the internet. So I highly recommend you go check them out. Even when my lovely mug is not on their show, they've been very kind to have me on a number of times as of late because of my current situation. But yeah, you should go check them out, subscribe to their channel. Anyway, I lost track of what the fuck I was trying. Oh yeah, about the sanctions. See, I'm going to be discussing this in more detail on their show. Winding down this in a little bit because I've gone 88 minutes, and like I guess about 100 minutes, that's good enough. Anyway, what I want to say about the sanctions and all that. See, the sanctions are only going to hurt the Europeans and the Americans. Bottom line. Because once Russia fully captures and controls Ukraine, which, like I said, will be in like 30 days, they will control 50% of the food imports of the Europeans, more than 50% of its petroleum imports. And of course, Europe doesn't produce any petroleum, or trivial amounts. And more than 50% of its natural gas, which it needs for electricity and heating. And by the way, the Nord Stream 2 will become academic once Russia has complete control of Ukraine. So it won't matter because Russia will control the Ukrainian pipelines. Simple. So anyway, once that happens and they start doing these sanctions, right? See, if these sanctions actually start hurting the Russians, you know what the Russians are going to do? They're going to cut off the food supply and the supply of commodities to Western Europe. That's what they're going to do. Of course they would. See, if you and I are conducting some business and I keep shitting on you and doing all these needling little things that are just fucking annoying, you're going to finally say, you know, fuck it. I'm not going to be your customer or client anymore, or your seller or whatever. I'm just going to walk away. And all of a sudden, you're fucked. See, the Russians can take their natural gas and their oil and sell it to the Chinese because there's the demand for it. The Chinese and also the Vietnamese and the South Koreans, because they have the pipelines for it. They built them over the last few years. So the Russians really don't need Western Europe. And the Europeans caused this problem because they kept abusing the Russians, treating them like shit. And whatever you might think of the Russians, but the Europeans did abuse them, did treat them like shit, and ignored their legitimate security needs. And I am not saying this as a Vladimir Putin fanboy. I'm saying this as a realistic assessment of what has happened. Vladimir Putin could be like the devil himself and eating babies for breakfast every fucking morning, and it won't change the fact that what was being done insofar as trying to pull Ukraine into NATO, ignoring Russia's security concerns, all of this just inevitably led to this situation, okay? It has nothing to do with the morality of the leadership, and it has everything to do with the stupidity and short-sightedness of the European and American leadership. And the arrogance of that leadership, quite frankly. I mean, the arrogance of these people is just off the charts, And so, anyway, the point. These dumb Europeans think that with all these sanctions, sanctions. They think that sanctions are like a magic bullet. Now, the thing is, see, a sanction, first of all, it only hurts the people of the country. It doesn't hurt the leadership class. It never does, because the people are the ones who always pay the price. And see, therefore, when you sanction a country, you are hurting the people, and this would matter if the leadership were actually beholden to the people. But if you have a totalitarian or authoritarian regime that is used to putting down its own people, well, then the people can suffer and suffer as much as they want, and they know that it won't make a lick of difference what they do because the authorities will put them down. Ergo, sanctions don't work because they hurt the people, and the people are powerless in a totalitarian or authoritarian regime where the power, the political power, just uses repression to put down any expression of grievance from the people. Does this remind you of that fellow in Canada? What's his name? Justin Castro. Yes, Justin Castro. Yeah, just like he did. Just like he did. He put down the legitimate concerns of the truckers, and what's that show you? He is an authoritarian, bordering on the totalitarian, isn't it? Yeah. But anyway, sanctions don't work. And they don't work to affect political change in totalitarian or authoritarian regimes. And so, but the Europeans are just so fucking dumb. And the chattering classes are so fucking dumb. They truly believe that these sanctions are like a magic bullet, like a silver bullet that kills a werewolf, like that, take that, Putin, right to the heart, bam, 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 the silver bullets of sanctions. Oh, he's still alive. And wait a second, how come I'm bleeding from the gut? Ah! Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen to the Europeans and the Americans. It's going to happen to the Americans too, because people don't know this, or not many people know this. But see, the United States imports a shitload of petroleum from Russia. It does. A lot, okay? Russia's petroleum output is 10 million barrels per day, okay? That roughly puts it at 10% of the global export market. They're the pivot player, okay? They can fuck over the whole market very easily. And if they decide that they don't want to sell to somebody, what are you going to do? Are you going to invade Russia because Russia doesn't want to sell oil to you? Is that how it fucking works? You got to force somebody to sell something to you? Yeah, you can't do that. And certainly can't force the Russians to sell their oil to you. And so what's going to happen? The Europeans and the Americans, if they continue on this train of hysteria and not looking at the situation realistically, the Russians eventually are going to get to a point where they say, you know what? We don't need to sell our oil, our grain, our Ukrainian grain, which we now control, our natural gas, our aluminum, our whatever, to the Europeans. We'll sell it to the Chinese, to the South Koreans, to the Japanese even. Japanese seem nice enough people, and they don't fuck with us the way the Europeans do. We'll sell it to the South Koreans. We'll sell it to the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese are hungry for this shit. We'll sell it to the Indians. They love this shit too. We'll sell it to everybody else except America and the Europeans. What will this do to the dollar? What will this do to the euro? If you all of a sudden no longer have commodities that are essential for your industry coming your way, um, the inflation of your currency is going to go off the charts. It's simple as. Yeah, because what's going to happen is, let's say, if, just for the sake of argument, you need 20 barrels a day, yeah, and you import, say, 10 of them from Russia, and Russia suddenly cuts you off. All of a sudden, you only have 10 barrels instead of the 20 that you usually need, right? And so what are you going to do? You're going to pay more for that oil, or for the gasoline. Your people are going to pay more. You're going to have to go out into the market and find some replacement oil. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. And they're going to get fucked. And here's the thing, and I've been thinking about this, and this is my conclusion. I'm coming to the conclusion that this is what the Europeans want. This is what the Americans want. They want to crash their own economies with these sanctions on Russia. They want these sanctions to trigger that collapse of the American and European economies so that they can blame it on the Russians, because that collapse is coming inevitably. Because the United States and the European nations, the only one that's not over indebted is in the Netherlands and Norway. All the others are way underwater. I mean, they're drowning, okay, drowning in debt. And so my thinking is that these sanctions and this hysteria, it seems to me it's deliberate. And I know it's out there, and I know that sounds kind of crazy, but hear me out. Think of it. If you know that your economy is going to crater and that the dollar is going to crater and go inflationary, I'm talking 20, 25, 30% per year, some shit like that, wouldn't you want some foreign crisis with a really bad person to be the one you can point the finger and blame and say, he did it, that evil Putin guy? Wouldn't you want that? If you're Boris Johnson, who's weak and everybody thinks he's a fool, and just by a sheer miracle of an incompetent opposition, he's still in power, or Joe Biden, who's senile and just pathetic. I mean, a shuffling old man who should be in like a retirement home. You know what I'm saying? Or Justin Castro, or Jacinda, what's her face in New Zealand. I mean, all these losers, right? And let's not forget about the EU bureaucrats. Starting with van der Leyen, that rich girl who got kicked upstairs into that position. And she's a moron. She's an idiot. She's a horse girl. A German aristocratic horse girl. You know the type. Arrogant and conceited, and thinks that they know everything, and they don't know shit about anything. Never worked a day in her life. Yeah. I mean, all these people, they know that the European and the American economies are collapsing. Okay. So if they can find a scapegoat in the Russians, in Putin, very convenient, I want it. There's also another thing that's going on, and it's starting to rear its ugly head, but people definitely don't want to talk about this fucking subject. The excess mortality that's going on in the West. I mean, it's a real thing. It's a real thing, and people have forgotten about it. I mean, COVID, man. COVID, like, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where's COVID? Where are the masks? Gone. The whole mask thing, the whole situation is gone, right? Well, the issue becomes, of course, the excess mortality. And you know what I'm talking about. In chat, I'd ask you to, in one word with 4 letters, and it begins with an S and ends in a T, but it does not have the vowel I, which 4-letter word is responsible for those excess deaths that you think? Yeah, I'll wait for chat to catch up. Sneed has 5 letters, dude. Oh, yeah, now some of you guys, yeah. Salt, that's pretty good. But no, like, I'm telling you, the excess deaths. And so how do you cover that? Well, a good old-fashioned war would help. These people are really evil. They're all about protecting their positions. All about protecting their position, and they don't give a fuck how many people have to die for it. I mean, the Zelensky regime and what it's doing, as I've outlined it, it's true. of handing out weapons to people who should not be handling a weapon. They should be handling a fucking butter knife, let alone an AK-74, let alone some other shit. Okay, giving releasing hardened criminals who have a military record and giving them weapons. What the fuck? Huh? That's what they're doing, by the way. Putting weapons and juicy military targets in the middle of civilians, in the middle of civilian outposts. Huh? And quite frankly, I mean, like when I heard the missile strike in the square in Kharkov, I couldn't believe it at first. And then I saw the video and I'm like, fuck, man, I know that. I've been there countless times, okay? Countless times. And then, you know, the stories started coming in. The Russians, huh? It doesn't make any sense. You know? And look, I'm not going to spell it out, okay? Because I don't want me spelling it out getting clipped and people saying, oh, you know, he's a Putin stooge. But we've heard enough lies in these 4 or 5 days of this fucking war. Enough lies from the Zelensky regime, you know, to write a fairly decent graphic novel, right? So I just don't buy it. I just don't buy this, you know, a Russian missile did it. It just doesn't make any sense. Not how the Russians have been behaving up to this point, yeah? Not how they've gone relentlessly after military targets, but they leave the civilians alone. They get out of their way. They give them safe passage. They don't fuck with the railroads. It doesn't make sense, okay? Simple as. But it makes a hell of a lot of sense if you want to have video that you can show in the West and point to Russian atrocities to convince people to join up in essentially a lost cause. Because at this point, it's a lost cause. Ukraine is going to fall, okay? And if you look at a map, the way it's going to fall is pretty simple. See, on the east side, you've got the Russian army busy building its cauldron, and it's about to close. And they're going to capture, what, 45,000 to 60,000. Hell, let's say that they're just 30,000 troops. That's a huge fucking chunk of the Ukrainian army. It renders it ineffective against the Russian army. Simple as that. And in the center, along the Dnieper River, you have from the south, from Odessa, from Kherson, they're moving north. And from Kiev, an air raid siren. From Kiev, they're coming south. They're going to link up. They're going to hold the whole center of the country. And from there, they pivot to the west, move, you know, decisively westward, and roll up the whole country. And that's that. And it seems to me that that'll be accomplished in 30 days. And look, I understand if you are angry at me for pointing this out, for telling you how it is. I understand. But you are angry at the wrong person, because I am not creating this reality. It's there. I'm just describing it. The people you should be angry at are the people who are lying to you. The people in positions of leadership, the people in the press, the mainstream media, they are lying about what's going on, and you are falling for it, and you are eventually going to realize the lie, and you're going to feel like a fool, but it'll be too late. And countless Ukrainians, innocent people, hardworking, decent people, will suffer, will lose their businesses, their jobs, their lives, for nothing, for the aggrandizement of disgusting people, morally reprehensible people. And am I saying that Vladimir Putin is better than these people? No, he's more of the same kind of bullshit. Well, no, that's not true, because at least he doesn't bullshit, okay? The only time he's bullshitted so far is when he calls this a police action. It's not a police action, motherfucker. It's an invasion. Just call it that. I'd respect you more if he called it an invasion, you know? But he's using this, you know, police operation or special operation. It's just an invasion. Like, come on, you know? We're all grown-ups. But he is forthright. And he has been crystal clear why the Russians are invading. It's not for no reason. But the West And the Ukrainians don't want to see those reasons. And because they don't want to see those reasons, because they bought into the bullshit that Putin evil, Putin, well, finally said, okay, fuck it, I'll be evil and invade your country, and there isn't a fucking thing you're going to be able to do about it. How you like them apples? See? And this is what's happened. But don't call me a Putin apologist. Don't call me a cheerleader for Putin. No, I'm just saying this is how things are. This is how things are. And like I said at the beginning, I understand human nature enough to realize that people don't hate the people who fooled them. They don't hate the two grifters who convinced the king to spend his fortune on invisible clothes. No, nobody hates the grifter, because the grifter is the grifter and he's always going to be the same. No, they hate the little kid who points out the truth. That's who they hate. And I understand that in this situation, I might be that little kid. And I don't mind if you hate my guts. I don't really care. Okay? If you hate my guts or not, you think it makes a licking difference for me? Fuck off, man. Your bad opinion of me matters zero to me. Okay? But I'm telling you this. I mean, if you're Ukrainian, I'm the best friend you'll ever have. I really am. I'm a true friend because I'm telling you the truth. And it costs me. It costs me to tell the truth. And that's why I'm your best friend, because all those other people, the Europeans and the Americans who egged you on, you Ukrainians, they egged you on and said, yeah, go ahead, poke the Russian bear. It'll be fine. We're right behind you. You go ahead and see what happens. You fucked around and you found out now, didn't you? Huh? And I'm telling you, this is how it was. So if you want to hate me for it, fine, but at least try to take what I'm telling you and understand what has happened to you and understand who your real enemies are. Take care and good luck.